everyone. Hello, welcome today. My name is Lakwanda.
And I'm Jerome, relationship coaches and founders of One Heart Couples in Richmond. And welcome to this week's edition of Straight from the Heart.
Today's episode is going to be a very special episode. We have some very special guests with us here today, and we're going to be talking about the power of praying for your spouse and praying for your marriage. And we especially want to offer some encouragement to those couples who feel like they've been trying to fix it on their own and nothing is really working. So we have some really special guests in the studio with us today. Let me go ahead and introduce Mr. Ray and Leandra Green.
How you guys doing today?
Thanks for having us, y'all.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Listen up. Man.
All right.
Well, yeah. we finna share some of this knowledge with the world. You know, we got a blessing in the house today. I'm telling you, these two are just absolutely amazing. Trust me. And when we get through, they're gonna enlighten you. I promise you that. But other than that, everything is all right.
We're good. Doing
Yes,
good.
sir.
Blessed.
Everything's wonderful.
I
Blessed.
appreciate you guys stopping by. Really, really do.
Thanks for having us.
No problem.
So you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourselves, how long you've been married, how long you've been together?
Been together now for 20, actually next month, 20 years. Been married, be 16 this year. 16.
High school sweethearts, something like that.
High school
Yes, sir.
sweethearts.
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all close with us.
We gotta be 21 years.
All right.
I heard that.
But they've been married longer than us, so hey.
God is a keeper.
If you want to be kept.
That is true. Okay, so like I said, we would just want to talk to the audience about the importance of praying for your marriage and praying for your spouse, and just kind of offer some encouragement for people that's been trying to work it out. And you know how we try to do it on our own and try to do it the way we wanted to do it, or try to change that man or woman ourselves, and it's not our place. So we just want to speak on that for a little while.
All right. Well, I guess the ball is in my court. So, after being married we've been together for almost 20 years. We've literally grown up together. We started out as children. We were teenage mothers, mother and father. And so we've pretty much all of our life, more than half of our life, we've been together. And so we've had the pleasure of growing together. And so he's seen me at my worst, and I've seen him at his worst. And there's definitely been many seasons that prayer pushed us through trials and tribulations, just personality issues. You come from two different backgrounds, bringing two different cultures together. Even though we're both African Americans, he came from a single family home. I came from a 2-parent home. Mm-hmm. So you could imagine we both, our roads kind of went different directions, but we had to find the equal between the two of us. So it was a challenge trying to adjust to somebody's personality that said put tissue on the roll, and let the toilet seat do this, certain things, and I was always a strong-willed, I've always been a leader, and so I've always been a strong-willed person. So I had to find a place of submission to the man that I said I do to, because I was used to having my own. I had my own house, I had my own car, everything, so to come in to be married, and we didn't live together until we actually got married. And so to come into a house together with someone that just was raised totally different from a different background. We both were Christians, of course, but just the environment was different. Mm-hmm. It was challenging. And especially being a strong-willed black woman, somebody telling what you can't do, what you won't do, what you won't wear. That was hard for me, because I already had a daddy that was strict. I had a daddy that was telling me what I couldn't do and what I couldn't wear. So to get married and have to find that place of submission for me was very, very challenging. So by the grace of God, I thank God that he gave him to me, because he helped me to be a better woman. I didn't know how broken I was until, he walked into my life and showed me real love. It wasn't contingent upon sex. It wasn't contingent upon what I could give him. He just loved me for me, and I'd never understood. I'd never had that kind of relationship. So that was very, very different for me, and I didn't even know how to embrace it, because of my background. So this has been a challenge. Marriage within itself is a challenge, but it has been such a great journey for us. I married my best friend, my prayer partner, my covering, and he fine on top of all that. You know what I mean? So, I mean, he's a winner. You know, hey, you know, I can't complain.
So my question is why? So in relationships we go through these ups and downs. We go through ups and downs, and as I mentioned before in previous times, me and my wife have been through hell and high water. We've been to the bottom, we've been to the top, we've been all over the place. Why in a relationship should you stay and pray for your mate? Why do you think that's so important to do that? Because today most people. You do one thing wrong, we breaking up.
Oh,
you know how
I
it is
don't got
today.
time for this. I don't need this.
Why,
I'm out.
Why do you think that's
Real
important?
quick.
Why do you think that's important?
Well, I would say one of the things that I did when we first got married was I would always point the finger, okay? Not realizing until later on, through good teaching from my pastor, I didn't learn until later on that I needed to start looking at myself. I need to start looking in the mirror. Some things, some of my personal philosophy, or because we're all shaped by our environment. Our minds are shaped by our environment. So based on what I seen at home, or based on the people I hung around and how they treated their wives, I thought that that was the right thing to do, when in fact that wasn't happening.
Right.
The things that the Bible says that you dwell with her according to knowledge. Okay.
Absolutely.
So the way that I might have seen one of my friends dwell with his wife, and she might have been okay with him doing certain things, but then when I tried that same thing, it wasn't working. So back to the original question, that again, so I had to look in the mirror. Michael Jackson's just that song, looking at a man in the mirror. I mean, that's an awesome song, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay,
Right.
so I had to look at myself, and I started praying, and God, I need you to help me to see her as you see her. Help me get these things that's in me that don't belong in me. We need to get that stuff out.
Gotcha.
So then when I can look at her through His eyes, then it will help me. To be able to move forward. It'll be at least easier for the time being, and I believe as He helps me, He will begin to work through her.
Gotcha.
Because again, if my mind is messed up, maybe the things that she's doing is okay, but maybe I'm the problem.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
And if I could say one thing to that too,
Oh, absolutely.
we a lot of times we want our spouses to be who we want them to be. Our what we want our spouse to act like, we want them to act like. So that was different for the both of us, because he had a concept of what I was supposed to be like, and I had a concept of what he was supposed to be like. But I had to get to a place where I began to, and I would tell him, well, the Bible says, and you shouldn't be doing this, or you should be doing more of this. And I was really, you should be leading us in prayer, and different things like that. And so God began to really deal with me and say, let me be his God. Let me be the God in his life. I don't need you to correct him. I don't need you to tell him what's the error of his ways. Your job is to cover him in prayer. Your job is to speak life into him. Your job is to speak to those areas that may not necessarily be as you want them to be, but to declare it over his life. And so I learned to shut my mouth, which is very difficult, because I come from a background where you say what you want, and you get it out. But I had to learn that my approach was not always the right approach. And so I learned that through prayer, that I have to talk to God, because, I realized my tactics is not winning him over, telling him about the error of his ways. Is, even though he might be wrong, men sometimes can be real stubborn.
You're right. You know what? I'll test it. That's the truth. I mean, we are what we are. But you know what? Here's the thing. I'm glad we're getting really down into this thing. All that sounds good and dandy, but what happens when, with this 2017, everybody want God to show up now. What happens in a relationship when you praying and you in different heartaches and stuff like that? Why go on when you praying to God, but it seems like God's not answering? How to deal with that? that part of it, because so many people try to call on God, but God may not come for a day, a week, a year, who knows, and you just being strong through the midst of that. So can you kind of explain to people how they can, endure that, when you're going through those times, how to be faithful, things of that type of nature?
Well, I can definitely say something right away. When I first got married, of course, you have this idea, and then God begins to the closer you get to God, he begins to reveal to you your husband's destiny and his purpose. As you pray for him, God should begin to reveal to you what they've been called to do. And I remember a time when we were bumping heads. We weren't seeing eye to eye, and God began to show me, it was like we were living together, but at the same time we were in two different places, emotionally, spiritually. And so during that season, God began to allow me to pray for him in a way that I'd never prayed for him before, because I was discouraged, because of what I saw. And so during those times of prayer, God began to show me my husband, and it sounds so crazy, but it began to show me my husband walking down our hallway. And as he began to walk down our hallway, he began to turn almost into like the Incredible Hulk. I only saw his back. And I began to see him literally form muscles and break out of his shirt as he was walking. And God began to say, that's what I'm going to cause your husband to be. Even though he looked like he is what he looks like right now, this is where he's going. And it was years. Listen, I'm not talking about days. I'm now walking into the manifestation of what God showed me 7-8 years ago, of what he was going to do through his life. And many a days I would cry and I would get angry, and I would become angry with God and say, why do you have me? What's taking so long? I know you said this, but he still ain't changed. His mindset ain't changed. So how do I keep praying for a man that I don't see change? And God began to say, don't worry about all of that. Let me be God. That's when I had to take my hands off of the situation, because it's easy. Who can't walk away? It's easy to walk away, but I believe, as I was telling the wives who do a wives call every third Tuesday and Thursday, I was telling them, women, and I'm not trying to make this a biased conversation, but women, I believe that God has given us the endurance to be able to hold on. We can go through labor for 12 hours and still be all right and push a baby out. So I believe that God is birthing something through wives and through intercession, through prayer, for our spouses, and learning how to pray for them until they become who God has called for them to be, until they walk in the leadership, until they walk in the fullness of what they were predestined to do. Sometimes things we have to labor for them.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. You know what? And the funny thing is, I appreciate that. Ditto, our relationship is sort of the same thing. Some of the things that you're saying. We've been through so many issues where it's like, hey, you're talking about up and down emotional streams. Oh my goodness, to where like, hey, do I even believe in God? What is God even talking about? What the heck? Because I come from a background. Me and my wife were sort of similar like you guys. We were babies. We wasn't raised in a two-parent home and things of that nature. So when we got together, we were literally 17, 18 years old and been together like that. So you're talking about uneducated when it comes to being together in relationships. I was always taught to treat women this way or treat women that way and treat women this way, or I'm the man. And then with the popularity and the things that I've did from basketball, it just allowed, me to be just absolutely nuts in my relationship when it comes to she's supposed to do what I'm saying. I'm the man. I'm the basketball star. I'm the one finna go pro and all that. But it wasn't like that. And it took years of, you say years of her praying for me, being there for me. I thought I was the one that was the more, spiritual ed person that had more God in me, but it was totally opposite. And I just couldn't hear what she was saying, but God was actually speaking through her 20 years ago. I wasn't listening. I'm like, hey, like I told you, I'm gonna be rich. You just follow me and spend some of this money. But it did work. But guess what? You notice how everybody started laughing. but that's my plan. That wasn't what the Lord had for me. But when he made me realize and understand that, hey, your wife, I got something for you guys, and your wife is gonna lead in this manner, not being the head, but she's gonna lead in this prayer thing and this trying to make sure that you guys stay on the same accord. Now I'm able to lead my household and my family in the right direction to where, hey, it's strictly God, it's strictly praying, strictly, because we make sure that we practice praying 1,000 times a day now, not literally, but
Right.
you know, because we understand totally, we understand the patience and faith and things of that type of nature. And you know, as the Bible states, you know, be content with what you have. You know, stay prayerful, keep your eyes on me, and I'll make sure you get everything that you need. And sometimes we fail to realize that the things that we need is not what society calls for it to have. You know, it's just about your mate, things of that nature. That may be all you need. You know, your family intact. I thank God that I have my wife and 4 kids in the same household. You know, so to me, that's my $1 million NBA contract that I received. You know, and a lot of people don't understand that's what it's really about. But because of the uneducation through time and things of that type of nature, that's why I'm glad you guys are here today, so you can speak that life into other people and things of that nature. So just wanted to enlighten you guys on a little bit of, you know, some of the things that we did and stuff like that. So what you think? Ooh.
Who is right. So, I mean, I find myself trying really hard to like encourage women who, well, I find a lot of women that don't, for one, remember Darius said that submission is not a bad word. A lot of people like submission. Oh, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Nobody tell me nothing, and I'm not finna have nobody leading me and blah, 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 and he not acting right. I don't have time for this. I don't need this. I'm independent, blah, blah, blah. But like when we talk to other couples, we try to use transparency as much as possible. And so we talk about how we had to get to a point where we were almost about to be, you know, to break up before we finally realized, you know, how to get it right and brought the Lord into our marriage. And now we're on a whole nother plateau. We never thought we would be with each other, but that's just through, you know, sticking it out, fighting it out, praying for each other, praying together, all of that. So I kind of really just, and I know that you guys, you can relate or whatever, having to get all the way to the bottom, basically, before you get yourself together a little bit. So if you can just kind of speak on that a little bit and maybe just offer some encouragement for couples that are like, really like, I'm done. And maybe just give them some encouragement for what God has done for you to maybe stick it out a little bit longer.
Well, I would say one thing that has helped me is I've realized that the Bible talks about how God will not allow us to be tempted above that which we can handle. So that's one of the main scriptures that I've held on to when I was at the lowest of lows, because I realized that if I'm going through it, God allowed it, just like He allowed Job to go through what he went through. He was there the whole time, but at the same time, you know, Job had to, of course, develop the sense where he had to trust God. Okay, so it's a 2-part thing. So in the midst of that, I had to understand as well that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, you know, if there was just a glimpse of light, then I knew I could make it. Okay, so I knew that the strength that I needed, I already had, even before I got here. So the thing is I had to walk through that, and it's a very difficult and at times lonely place. Okay, because the people that you need to speak to you, you know, sometimes those people aren't there. Okay, and then the people that you don't need to speak to you, it's like they're saying stuff in your ear, and now you're already in a weak place. So now every wind that comes your way, you're shifting. You know, so and then ultimately you can make a decision that will impact your life and your family's life.
Absolutely.
So my encouragement would be to stay in the fight, stay in the race, understand your purpose and the will that God has set out for you know, those couples, because it's going to be tough. The Bible says many are the afflictions of the righteous, but God is the one that delivers him out of them all. So you know, they have to allow that word to be alive in their spirits and in their hearts, and believe and trust that, you know, hey, we all face storms. We all face storms. So you know, it's just a matter of just, again, staying and being around people who are going in the same direction that you're going in. That helps out a whole lot. Okay, so that's, like I said, that's something that has helped me. not being isolated. Idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Hey, slow down. Slow down. You sure you ain't no pastor? Slow down.
No, sir. So I try to keep my mind busy and keep it on the things of God. You know.
Got you.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I got to.
So let me ask you this. We're going to get biased for a second. You know, she spoke about the women. She don't want to make it like that. We're going to make it about me and you right now. So we're going to 86 them out of this. Tell me, when did God come into your life? Absolutely, when you understood who he was. How was you? Not just knowing God, but really inside there knowing who God was. I got a question after that.
Even before I got married, or?
Before you got married? Either or.
You know what? I'm going to say...
when it really hit home and that was your partner.
I'm going to say probably in grade school sometime. And I know this sounds crazy, but I always wanted to do the right thing in school as much as I could. I wasn't perfect, but didn't bother people. I minded my own business. That's what I did. This one guy, he was trying me, and I'm trying not to get kicked out of school, because that's just, I'm just trying not to. So anyway, so what I ended up doing was I go home and I'm praying. I'm praying. I'm fast in grade school.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm praying in grade school. I don't want to get kicked out of school. Okay. So I'm praying, and what ended up happening was I'm reading scriptures about what God does to your enemies, and I can't remember the scripture verbatim. I know it's in Matthew, the one that I was reading, and I just kept quoting it. Now, during that time, he was still doing what he was doing.
Right.
Still doing what he was doing. I'm like, now God, I know you hear me, because you say that you know the voice of your sheep. That's what you say.
Right.
I didn't say it. You said it. That's what he said. Okay. So I'm like, you got to hear me. Okay. So I'm still going at it. I'm still doing what I should be doing. Okay. Still remaining faithful. After so long, I think I seen him one time outside of school. Everything was cool. Everything was cool. Yeah. When he got back to school, I believe at some point I had absolutely no problems for the rest of the school year, or whenever it was at that time. So that's probably when I could say that he became the most real to me, because even as a kid, I understood that there was some endurance in me that I didn't realize I had.
Already.
Pressing
Wow.
through when I see the storm, but I'm having a hard time seeing around it. When is it gonna stop? You know what I mean? I don't see an end to this storm. But I believe that there is an end. I just can't see it.
So my second part to that question. So since you had that in elementary school, you was blessed. I ain't had it like that. So, but speed. Let's speed up time now. Let's fast forward. In your relationship, did you contradict your beliefs when you went through storms?
Yes. I believe I did at some point in my relationship, yes.
Yeah. So even though you had them in elementary school, had a little adolescent running around the schoolyard,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
fast forward to your relationship,
Yep.
you say, hey, I don't know.
Yeah. There was a point when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why you say so?
Well,
not necessarily the event, but why you?
I think it was a time where I couldn't. I was so caught up in the moment where everything that I had learned went out the window.
just fly out the window.
I knew the right thing to do, but it was those other things that the opposition was against me, and it to some degree it overtook me, not fully, but enough to know that I'm not in the place that I should be in.
Gotcha.
Okay. So yeah, that's what that's what ended up happening in a nutshell.
I got you. Hey, I'm done with the bias session. We good on that. We can switch it back to the ladies. Yeah. So
Okay. I'm glad he got a chance to pick your brain a little bit, because I know that a lot of people out there know Miss Leandra, and we hear her talk all the time. So it's good to get a chance to hear you and see you in. You know what I'm saying? I love it. I love it. I love it. So that was an amazing conversation. I thank you guys so much for stopping through and giving a little bit of that wisdom to us and to everybody who's watching, guys. So I just want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you picked up some tips that you can use today, as far as praying for your spouse, praying for your marriage in general, and just some encouragement for when you just feel like you've tried and you can't go on. Trust me, from our situation as well as theirs, God can handle it. He can bring you through that thing and put you on the other side. So again, thank you so much for tuning in to Straight from the Heart today. As always, be sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram. Have a good one.